Hi, I'm Gillian Harris from Gilliangladrag. I'm the author of 3 books about felting and felt making, Complete Felt Making, Carnival of Felting, and my most recent book, Felting Fabulous Flowers, just here, some on the table here. And I'm also the designer of our felt making kits, which we sell here and also to lots of other shops and businesses around the world. I design wet felting kits and I also design needle felting kits too. And we also have lots of other wools and equipment, everything you could possibly imagine to do with felting. And I'm talking to you from our studio, which is where I teach, above our shop. And our shop is called the Gilliangladrag Fluff-a-torium, and it's in Dorking, Surrey, UK. So I'm going to show you now how to make a simple piece of flat felt using the wet felting method. A number of our kits use this method, so all of our corsage kits, our bunting kits, and obviously our children's kits as well. They're the most simple and easy to do, and this is how you go about it. We're going to be using wool tops, which are included in all of our kits. The wool is always merino that we use because it felts the fastest. Really, really important how you pull the wool apart. You've got to hold it about 6 to 8 inches down with the hand you don't write with, and then the hand you do write with is the one that pulls off the very ends of the fibres and lays them down onto the table or the mat that you're working onto. So it's absolutely imperative that you don't pull too much of the wool off at once. If you do, you'll end up with something that looks more like this and is going to end up into a big clump rather than a nice flat simple piece of easy to make felt. So don't do that. You are literally just grabbing the very, very ends of the fibres and just overlapping them as you lay them down. So it's a repetitive action. You're just pulling off the ends, and as you move your hand down, it will release these fibres a little bit more for you. So in the same way that you shouldn't grab too much of it, you also shouldn't hold it too high up because you'll be holding onto the fibres and you won't be able to pull them off. So holding it fair way down and then just releasing the fibres as you go. So I'm just going to cover the whole of this mini mat. It's one of our mini mats, and it's usually the size that you need to make all sorts of things, but particularly corsages and then bunting, all that kind of thing. So you can see I'm laying all the fibres in the same direction as well. I'm laying them in the opposite direction to the slats of the bamboo mat. That's important because if you lay them in the same direction, you'll find that they get trapped into the slats as you rub the felt together. So always make sure you do it the other way to start with. And then when you get to the very end, you can just lay the wool with the end there like that, and then you're done. Once you've covered the whole of the mat with your wool tops, then you're going to do the same again, but you're going to lay them in the opposite direction over the top. So this is the second layer of wool going over the top, and I'm laying these in the opposite direction, remember. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting the little white polka dots over the top of the red using the white wool tops. You've got to be really careful when you're doing any designs that you don't use too much wool. So it really is the tiniest little piece of fluff that creates one polka dot. If you use too much, you'll really make your life so much more difficult because the wool just won't attach together. Basically all these little fibres all need to interlock as you rub them together with soap and water in a minute. So if it's nice and open and wispy, it's going to be a lot easier to do that. So there's one, and then I'm just going to randomly make a few more and just place them all over the top. So once you've got all of your wool laid out and your design is on, now it's time to actually turn it into felt. So the next thing to do is to get your netting and to place that over the top of what you've laid out. And the netting is going to protect it, hold it in place whilst you rub it together. Then you're going to get your soapy water solution. All this is a squirt of washing up liquid. If you're in the US, it's called detergent, I think, liquid detergent, anything you use for washing the dishes. Literally about a dessert spoonful of that, don't go too crazy with it. And then it's lukewarm water that you're filling it up with. It's as simple as that, that's your basic felting solution. And then I've just got a normal, ordinary, everyday bar of soap here that I use as well. So I'm going to sprinkle the soapy water all over the top here. You know, and you need enough so that you can get those fibres wet through, but you don't need so much that it starts to sort of drip onto your toes and create massive puddles everywhere. So there's a bit of a fine line between enough and too much, and you'll discover what that is as you do it. But basically you're going to try and get all of the air out of the wool. It's got quite a lot of air in it, so you're really putting the water on until it feels completely flat as a pancake and there's no air inside anymore. So I'm just going to do this to the whole of this piece. So there you are. So you can see that it's completely flat. It's quite gluey, almost like you've glued it to the table. That's how it should feel. And you should have this soapy haze, that's what you're after. And if you haven't got that, you probably haven't put enough of the liquid detergent in, or the washing up liquid in here. But that's fine, don't panic. You just take the bar of soap, rub the bar of soap all the way across the top. And that will give you a little bit more of a lather. And you might just need an extra little splosh of water. And you should be in a situation where you can write your name in the soap. Okay, so if you can do that, then you know you've got enough. And if you can't, you need a bit more. The next thing that's going to happen is you're going to start to rub the felt together, okay? So this can take anywhere from about 10 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on how fast you rub and how vigorous you are. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit more water around the edge. When you rub, it's a firm, even pressure. And if you want to, you can just peel back the net and readjust your designs a little bit, because sometimes they move around when you do first wet it down. So once you've got everything back where you want it and you're happy with how it looks, I think that's all fine, it's all quite random, then the netting goes back over the top and you can start rubbing. Keep the netting taut over the top. It's pointless rubbing it with the netting moving about. The netting there is there to hold everything in place, so keep it flat and taut, and away you go. If you do get any of these little bits coming through, pick them off, and then you can actually remove the net and lay it back in a slightly different position, because it might otherwise attach to your felt, which isn't what you want. So just watch out for all these little bits and then carry on rubbing. So how do you know when you've rubbed it enough is the big question I always get asked. And basically what you have to do is you peel the net back and you rub your hand across it really, really briskly to see whether the fibres have bonded together. Each of the tiny, tiny fibres has got microscopic scales on it, which all need to interlock in order for the pattern to stay put on top of the fibres that you've laid out, for it all to come together as a piece of fabric rather than being the wool that you've laid out initially. So that's what you're testing for. And once you can rub your hand across it and it's fixed, it's usually about 10 or 15 minutes after you've started rubbing a piece this size. Once you can do that, then you can remove the net and very carefully but quite calmly just pick up the whole piece and turn it onto the back. And obviously I've got the mat underneath here still, just to give me a bit of friction from underneath as I'm rubbing it, and also as a size guide when I laid it out, but you could just do it directly onto a table. You don't need to do it onto a mat. And then I'm going to pop the net back on again. And then I'm going to rub the back as well, I'm afraid. There's a bit more rubbing to go yet. So again, about 5 or 10 minutes on the back as well. Although this bit hasn't got a design on it, you just need to make sure that all the fibres have really started to bond together and felt together, because the next thing you're going to do is you're going to rinse it under the tap. So you're just going to fold it up a bit to protect it. And then you're going to run the tap lukewarm and just get as much of the soap out of it as you can. Once you feel you've done that, then obviously give it a good wring to remove the water as well. So now flatten the piece out into your bamboo mat. I've just put a tea towel underneath the bamboo mat just to stop it from slipping. Get it nice and flat, and now you're going to start rolling it, which will shrink and harden the felt. So you're going to roll it up as tightly as you possibly can. And then you're going to start to roll it backwards and forwards 20 times. So what this is doing is turning it into a proper piece of fabric. It's the fulling process that will make it shrink and make it go much harder. And it actually shrinks in the direction that you're rolling it in. So because of that, I'm going to turn it 90 degrees clockwise. I'm just going to fold the side in there. For 20 rolls that won't matter, it won't attach together. And I'm going to roll another 20. Okay, then I'm going to open it up again. And then I'm going to open that up, turn it 90 degrees again. So now it's upside down in front of me, and do another 20. So the tighter you roll it, the easier it is. If it's rolled up very sloppily, then it's much harder to roll. And finally on this side, 90 degrees clockwise again. If you always go clockwise, you'll remember where you're at. And then that bit goes in there. And another 20 backwards and forwards. So now I've done 80 rolls, and now I'm just going to turn that over onto the other side, and I'm going to do it all over again. So another 20 in each direction. So there you are, that's a full roll, and you can see how much it's already shrunk compared to how it started. It's already significantly reduced in size. So now I'm going to go back to the sink and give it a really hot rinse and then a really cold rinse, and I'm going to make sure all the soap is out and as much of the water is out as possible. So now I'm back from the sink, having rinsed it again, and I've actually just rolled it again as well. So this is it finished. And as you can see, it's shrunk quite significantly overall. So that's what you should expect. If something's really well felted, it will shrink quite a lot. So always plan that in to whatever it is that you're making. If this was a piece from our boomting bunting kit, this would now just be cut up into the pennants for the bunting. And it's as simple as that. I mean, once it's made and it's properly felted, it shouldn't feel fluffy anymore, and it should be easily cut, and it won't fray at the edges, so perfect. You know, some of our other kits are slightly more complex, but you can get a greater degree of depth and interest by using lots of different colours when you're laying out the designs. So there's lots of scope to do lots of interesting things just with wet felting alone. And if you do want to make scarves or bigger things, then you'll need one of our larger mats, which is really enormous but allows you to do much larger stuff. Whereas I've just used this little mini mat here. But it's a very magical process, as you can see, and just from a few fibres and a few pieces of wool you can end up with a piece of fabric that's really very special.